Hello and welcome back to the Hazzabhajan YouTube channel. It is Harry here, and today it is time to continue on with my football alphabet series where I take a look and profile some of the best clubs and players whose names and surnames respectively begin with a certain letter. For today's installment, it is the first video of the F segments, which means you're going to be looking at 5 of the best clubs whose names begin with the letter F. And if you go on to enjoy this video, of course, please don't forget, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and you can check out the playlist, which will be linked at the end of this video, or indeed in the description down below, which has all the other episodes that I've done in the football alphabet to date. But without any further ado, here are 5 of the best clubs whose names begin with the letter F. Number 1. Fenerbahçe. One of Turkey's big 3 alongside Galatasaray and Besiktas, Fenerbahçe are the only one of the trio who are based in the Asian part of Turkey. They are also the youngest of the 3, having been founded in 1907, although its foundation was done in secrecy, as a strict Ottoman rule forbade Turkish nationals from founding football clubs owing to the sport's English heritage. That particular law was lifted a year later though, and in 1909 they joined the Istanbul League, winning it for the first time in 1912-13 with an unbeaten campaign. Prior to the league's dissolution in 1959 upon the creation of a nationwide professional league, Fener were the Istanbul League's most successful team with 16 titles to their name, including the very last edition. They had also, unsurprisingly, become an extremely popular side, partly thanks to their domestic successes, but also thanks to their games which they played against English Royal Navy divisions during the Turkish War of Independence, which they won quite a few of. The transition into professional football therefore proved to be a doddle, and they won the inaugural Super League title in 1959, becoming the first Turkish team to compete in the European Cup in the process. Throughout the 1960s, they picked up 4 more league crowns and eliminated Manchester City in the first round of the European Cup in 1968-69, the only time City appeared in the European Cup or Champions League prior to Sheikh Mansour's 2008 purchase of the club. However, over the next few decades, they experienced a relatively fallow period by their high standards, with 7 league titles in 30 years, including just 1 during the 1990s, allowing Galatasaray to supersede their league title tally. Although Gala remain ahead of them on 22, Fener are only 3 behind them with 19, albeit having failed to win a single title since 2014. Unlike Gala, Fenerbahçe are yet to win a European trophy, with a quarter-final appearance in the 2007-08 Champions League and a semi-final exit in the 2012-13 Europa League being the best runs they have mustered to date. They were invited to be a part of Europe's G14 of elite football clubs in 2007, just a year before the organisation disbanded. Good timing. The darkest period in the club's history undoubtedly came in 2011, when Turkish football authorities began looking into allegations of match fixing against them following their Super League title win over Trabzonspor. They'd won 16 of their final 17 games to usurp Trabzon on head-to-head record, but immediately following the season's conclusion, 19 games were investigated, with one Istanbul BB player admitting to having played a role in fixing their game against Fener. Their owner, Ali Yildirim, was jailed for 6 years and the club was banned from European football for 2, although Yildirim was released 3 years early and, eventually, everyone involved in the case was acquitted, meaning that Fener were not stripped of that league crown. Famous faces to have donned their yellow and blue home kits include Roberto Carlos, Robin van Persie, Nicolas Anelka, JJ Okocha, and the club's all-time top goalscorer with 423 goals in 615 games, Lefter Kuchukandonyedis. Number 2. Feyenoord. Much like with Fenerbahçe, Feyenoord are involved in a big 3 all of their own, although theirs is, of course, in the Netherlands alongside Ajax and PSV, and they are the least successful of the 3. They came into being in 1908 by virtue of, as the club puts it on their official website, 4 enthusiastic young men meeting in a cafe, and after a multitude of name and kit changes, they eventually settled on Feyenoord and a red and black home kit in 1912. 9 years later, they won promotion to the Dutch top flight for the first time, and they are yet to taste a single relegation since. They don't look like doing so anytime soon either, currently sitting atop the Eredivisie. Known as the Club of the People owing to their close connection to the local dock workers, they won their first league title in 1924, one of 5 they would win prior to the league transforming into the Eredivisie in 1954. A common theme that has been running throughout this series is a so-called golden age for particular clubs, and Feyenoord are no exception. Theirs came from 1961 to 1974, during which time they lifted 6 Eredivisie titles, as they and fierce rivals Ajax formed a duopoly over the Dutch game that wouldn't be broken for 15 years. To top it all off, they became the first Dutch team ever to lift the European Cup after they beat Celtic 2-1 in the final in 1970, following that up with an Intercontinental Cup success in 1971 and the UEFA Cup triumph in 1974. And if you want to learn more about that particular era of Feyenoord, I have made an entire video dedicated to it. I'll make sure to stick up a link to it at the end of the video. Whilst they have remained a consistent force in the Dutch game and competed in Europe on numerous occasions since, they've only been able to muster up 4 more league titles since 1974 and only 1 since the turn of the millennium, that coming in 2017. That being said, their 2002 UEFA Cup success against Dortmund is the last time a Dutch team has ever won a European trophy to date, and whilst they had a chance to end that barren spell last year in the Europa Conference League, they lost to Roma in the final. Their scariest time came during the late 2000s, when there were real fears that the club could go under, amidst financial meltdowns, numerous fire sales, and failures to qualify for Europe on a consistent basis. Things got so bad that at one stage they had to send requests off to the KNVB in order to register new players, but in 2011 the KNVB finally declared the Rotterdam outfit no longer in debt. A list of famous Feyenoord alumni is massive, but it includes Johan Cruyff, Rinus Israel, Dirk Kuyt, Robin van Persie and Stefan de Vrij, to name just 5. Number 3. Flamengo. Since I limit my video to 1 inclusion per country, it means that one of great rivals Flamengo and Fluminense has to miss out. And since Flamengo are purported to be the most supported club in Brazil, with an estimated fan base of over 40 million people, they are the ones who feature. Originally founded as a rowing club in 1895, football was added to their roster in 1911 after 10 disgruntled Fluminense players defected to Flamengo, with one of their rowers also being Fluminense's captain at the time. The two great rivals played each other for the first time the following year, a game which Fluminense won 3-2, and in 1963, an estimated crowd of 194,000 turned out to watch a match between the two at the Maracanã, where they both currently reside. During the amateur era of Brazilian football, Flamengo won 6 Campeonato Carioca titles, and upon their professionalization in 1933, their support network grew rapidly, leading them to be nicknamed the most beloved of Brazil. Have they been able to live up to that billing on the pitch? Well, kind of. They were inaugural members of the Brazilian Serie A in 1959, and they are one of 4 teams never to have been relegated alongside Cuiabá, Santos and Sao Paulo, but it took them until 1980 to win it for the first time, when they were spearheaded by superstar Zico. However, they have won 7 titles to date, including back-to-back crowns in 2019 and 2020, putting them joint 3rd in Serie A's all-time list, behind only Corinthians and Palmeiras. What's more, they are one of 5 Brazilian teams to have won 3 Copa Libertadores titles, with theirs coming in 1981, 2019 and just last year, as well as finishing runners-up in 2021. Alongside the great Zico, famous alumni include the Emperor Adriano, former Inter Milan and QPR goalkeeper Julio Cesar, Brazil's pre-World War II hero Leonidas, 1994 World Cup star Romario, and the joyful Ronaldinho, albeit past his best when he moved to Flamengo, aged 31. Number 4. Fiorentina. It's a weird trait, for want of a better word, that I have with some Italian clubs, that I think they have won more than they actually have, and Fiorentina are no exception. They came into being via a merger of 2 Florence rivals, namely CS Firenze and PG Libertas, in 1926, in order to give the region a team that could rival those in the strongholds of Milan and Turin. It took them 5 years to reach the promised land of Serie A, and they challenged for the league title over the next few seasons, but they failed to win it and were stunningly relegated in 1938. They bounced back immediately though, and they finally got their hands on the Scudetto in 1956, backing that up with a run to the European Cup final in 1957, where a controversial penalty awarded against them contributed to Real Madrid beating them 2-0. However, they became the first Italian team to win European silverware in 1961, when they lifted the inaugural European Cup Winners' Cup tournament, the same year that they won the Coppa Italia, one of 6 times they've won that particular competition. Their second, and to date last, Scudetto came in 1969, although they would have won another in 1982 if it weren't for a highly alleged, if unproven, match-fixing scandal. On the final day of the season, they drew with Cagliari, although they had a probably legitimate goal disallowed. Meanwhile, title rivals Juventus were awarded a controversial penalty, from which they scored, whilst their opponents Catanzaro were denied a clear penalty of their own, allowing Juve to overtake Fiorentina right at the last. A fierce rivalry between the two has stemmed directly from this game, with midfielder Giancarlo Antonioni remarking, "They have stolen the title," and La Viola faithful coining the phrase of, "better to be second than thieves." Things reached a nadir in 1993 when, despite boasting a squad with the likes of Gabriel Batistuta, Brian Laudrup and Stefan Effenberg, they were relegated to Serie B for the first time in over 50 years. And although they returned straight away, worse times were to follow. In 2001, it was revealed that they had debts of $50 million, and despite the best attempts of the owner to stave off those debts, the club was declared bankrupt following relegation in 2001-02 and was forced to restart in Serie C2, the fourth tier of Italian football, as a new entity, Fiorentina Viola. It only took them 2 years to return to Serie A though, as they won promotion in 2002-03, were allowed to skip Serie C1 entirely based on sporting merits, as the Italian FA quoted it, and then won the Serie B promotion playoff in 2003-04. They then became implicated in the 2006 Calciopoli scandal and were initially relegated to Serie B with a 12-point deduction, although upon further appeals, their punishment was reduced to a mere 15-point deduction and remaining in Serie A. Ever since, they've finished fourth on 5 separate occasions, but have sunk back to mostly being a mid-table Serie A outfit, and they currently sit in 12th as of the time of this recording. Number 5. Fenerbahçe. The final team in this video is a bit of a rogue call, namely Fenerbahçe, but I thought why not go a bit rogue for once? After all, that was the whole point of this series when I started it 2.5 years ago. They were set up in 1899 as a multi-sports club, adding football to their roster in 1901, the year in which they competed in the inaugural Hungarian Championship. It only took them 2 years to win it for the first time, and by 1941 they had added a further 15 titles to their trophy cabinet, establishing themselves as Hungarian powerhouses. They became the only Hungarian team to ever win a European competition in 1964-65, as they beat Roma, Manchester United, Athletic Bilbao, and then Juventus in the final to win the Intercity First Cup. And they would reach the final again in 1968, although this time they would lose to Leeds. They would suffer a similar fate in the 1975 European Cup Winners' Cup, this time at the hands of Dynamo Kiev, and their only splashes into the European Cup or Champions League have ended rather quickly, including in 2020-21 when they came fourth in a group containing Barcelona, Dynamo Kiev and Juventus. When it comes to Hungarian football though, no one can top their tally of 33 league titles, including each of the last 4, and 118 seasons spent in the top flight. However, they are not top flight ever present, as they were forcefully relegated by the Hungarian authorities in 2006 after it was revealed that they were unable to make payments owed to former players, directors and managers owing to their immense debt. Despite appeals made to court and being nearly awarded £2 million in compensation from the Hungarian FA, it took until 2009, by which point they had been bought by English businessman Kevin McCabe, for them to return to the top flight, where of course they have remained ever since. Magical Magyar Sandor Kocsis and Zoltán Sibort have turned out for Fenerbahçe, as well as Ballon d'Or winner Florian Albert and pre-World War I hero Imre Schlosser, who allegedly scored 258 goals in 155 league games for the club. Even Erling Haaland can't match that. And that just about wraps up today's video, looking at 5 of the best clubs whose names begin with the letter F. If you enjoyed this video, of course, like I said at the start, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. You can check out the other Football Alphabet episodes that I've done using the playlist link that's hopefully on screen, as well as hopefully the video about Feyenoord, one of the teams in this video, of course, which should also be maybe about here or so, depends on how I format the end screen or what have you of this video. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. Check those videos out, as I say, and until next time, I'll see you then.